You're live.
I know. Welcome back to Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. It is Wednesday, January 14th. Good reminder that it's the 14th. And we're going to begin with S-198, an act relating to regulation and taxation of tobacco products and tobacco substitutes. And I'll remind everybody, we are the committee that not only oversees economic development, we oversee consumer protection. This is one of our key consumer protection bills we'll be looking at this year. Thank you, Thomas. And so to begin our discussion of this, we're going to turn to the lead sponsor of the bill, Ginny Lyons. Senator Lyons, take it away.
Well, thank you for having me in, Senator Ginny Lyons. I am sponsoring S-198 along with the chair. And obviously, I've talked from the public health perspective in this bill and the importance of restricting access of nicotine, particularly for pre-adolescents and adolescents, which is integrated within the bill itself. So I understand. There are provisions in the bill that we have worked on previously. For example, purchase, use, and possession, eliminating that. Also, the added position that's funded through the fund, the tobacco fund based on fines, that would be a limited position for investigation of violations of the law relating to tobacco and tobacco substitutes. So just as just looking at this, the amount of nicotine that is consumed by adolescents and pre-adolescents can have a significant effect on brain development. We know that. We know that up until the age of 25, our neural pathways are developing. We understand that the effect on that development, it can result in behavioral changes if nicotine is consumed. And we also know that there can be long-term changes. Well, we know about cognitive impairment. We know about mood disorder. We know that one of the long-term events is impulse control. So the more that we can do to understand how much nicotine is in some of the tobacco products and tobacco substitutes, the better off we are in terms of limiting access for adolescents. Right now, tobacco substitutes don't have the stamp on them that cigarettes do and other tobacco products have. And so one of the things that this bill will do will add the stamp for a fee dependent on the level of nicotine in the product. So if it's 5 milligrams or less, one level of payment. If it's higher than 5 milligrams, another payment. So that the tax stamp will be dependent upon the content within this tobacco substitute. And so why is this important? One cigarette contains about 2 milligrams of nicotine. Our tobacco substitutes contain anywhere from 5 or 2 up to 57 or 59 milligrams of nicotine. It's a huge walloping dose that when kids are exposed to this can cause end result of addiction. So anything that we can put in place that helps us understand how much nicotine is there and adds a regulatory oversight, which would include the investigator position that I talked about earlier, and allow for wholesale dealers to put the stamp on the product, make sure it's there. Those are all things that are included within the bill. And as you go through the bill, I hope that you will consider the importance of what I'm saying in terms of limiting access, but also not blaming the child. Rather, it is the access through purchasing that someone is selling to kids who are minors, and so it's not the kid who should be punished for this. Rather, it's the seller. And so that's implicit within the purchase, use, and possession, removing that, those sections of statute that are currently there.
Can I ask the third
I
one?
don't know what else to say here, because as you go through the bill, and Jen will go through the bill in detail with you, and there's a lot of detail.
We'll get copies of them.
Yeah, that's more pertinent to your, committee, but bottom line is, what are we trying to do? And for me, it's trying to ensure that access remains at the adult level. As long as we have this stuff out there, keep it at the adult level. There's some marketing issues within the bill, because right now vape products, are very attractive to teenagers. They look like pencils, or they look like pens, and, I can share experiences with you. I'm sure we all can do that. We know that there are certain types of electrified vape product that will result in greater vaporization. So there's an increased rate of absorption. So it takes 10 to 20 seconds to get nicotine from cigarettes into the brain. That's a short time. With vape products, it's sort of variable. But when kids inhale vape, they're also inhaling heavy metals and other products. So, I'll stop there.
I think we have a question, Keisha.
So this is great. Since we don't have the bill in front of us, I want to make sure I understand.
We're getting.
This incorporates, our committee had done some work last biennium to reduce or remove the penalty entirely from kids.
Purchase, use, and yes.
And so this accomplishes that and goes further and sort of makes up the revenue potentially by seeking consumer information labeling.
Right, it is a consumer protection
Yeah.
piece. I mean, if you consider the kids are consumers of these products, which is unfortunate, we're trying to, the adult brain is less affected in the way that I was describing about with nicotine, but kids' brains, very.
And maybe this came up while I was sick and with Commissioner Knight, but they had wanted an online regulator, like a forensic, I don't know, digital oversight, because a lot of the nicotine liquids are like some dark part of the internet you can buy them on.
There's an internet provision within the bill.
Okay.
You know, so you can look at that with Jen.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go through that with Jen. We're getting the bill now to walk through. Access now, I mean, are we controlling how successful, and maybe this is a question for
Wait, ask the
Jill and
question.
Rose, because it would be interesting to know how successful we are controlling access at the moment. I'm not sure.
I think what would be helpful to you would be to have some school teachers in and ask how successful. Because what I hear from my local folks is that kids are becoming nervous, agitated, jumping up, going to the restroom so that they can, going to the bathroom so that they can quickly grab a vape. The vapes that they own look like pencils or pens, and so they can hide them beautifully. This is like contraband within schools, that it's just rampant, and if you just walk down the street, you can see the vapes being used. And the liquid vapes that are purchased at the stores, you know, we don't know how much nicotine is in those. We don't know we do know stuff in the vapors.
Well, thank you. Jay, any other questions for Ginny? I think we have some great data.
Will there be testimony on, actual statistics on youth?
I think that's what's coming up.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. DOH can help, or BMS can help with that, and, the marketing piece, I think, you're gonna have a discussion about that. My committee may wanna just do a little flyby on some of this, but that's good.
Great, thank you.
Thank you
for getting it launched.
Considering it.
And, yes, Jen, come join us. And Tom, I assume you want to see it on computer, and David, would you like a copy also?
Probably,
I give you a copy. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Jen, welcome.
Good morning, Jen Carvey from the Office of Legislative Counsel. And Madam Chair, do you like the language up on the screen? I'm prepared for
we all have it in front of us.
Okay.
It's helpful, I suppose, for people online. I'm easy either way.
Okay, well, I believe I am a click away from being too good.
Okay. If you want to put it on the screen for those who are watching, then it's just fine.
Okay, great. So I'm here to walk through S-198, which is entitled An Act Relating to the Regulation and Taxation of Tobacco Products and Tobacco Substitutes. The bill starts in the chapter in Title VII on tobacco products and makes a number of changes in that chapter, starting with definitions and expanding the scope of what is meant by tobacco license to include not just retail sale, but also licenses that permit someone to engage in importation, distribution, wholesale sale, or retail sale, or a combination, and adds to the types of products, so not just tobacco products, but tobacco substitutes, which is statute speak for e-cigarettes and nicotine pouches and a number of things you'll see in the next definition. Substances containing nicotine or otherwise intended for use with a tobacco substitute or tobacco paraphernalia. All that comes under the the scope of what a licensee may be selling or distributing. The definition of tobacco substitute, some of this is changed for clarity, some of this is expanded to try to capture some emerging products. So tobacco substitute under existing law, or particularly as the law was originally created on this topic, was looking at e-cigarettes. But the scope of the products available is expanded, and so we're expanding the definition here to say a tobacco substitute is any product that meets all of the following conditions. And some of this is also necessary to do some of the tax changes. So the product is manufactured from, derived from, or contains tobacco or nicotine, whether natural or synthetic, including nicotine alkaloids and nicotine analogs, which are some of the natural and synthetics. The product is intended for human consumption by smoking, chewing, inhaling, sucking, absorbing, or consuming in any other manner. And the product is not a tobacco product as defined in this section. So it's not your sort of cigarettes, cigars, things like that. The term tobacco substitute includes, and now we're getting into existing law, electronic cigarettes and other electronic or battery-powered devices that contain or are designed to deliver nicotine or other substances into the body through the inhalation of vapor and have not been approved by the FDA for tobacco cessation or other medical purposes. And it also, the term tobacco substitute includes nicotine pouches and any liquids, whether nicotine-based or not, and delivery devices sold separately for use with a tobacco substitute. So tobacco substitute comes up a lot in this bill, so I want to make sure we're all clear on the definition. And then there's also an existing carve-out saying cannabis products and tobacco cessation products are not tobacco substitutes. Cannabis products are dealt with under the cannabis statutes, and tobacco cessation products are not specifically regulated in the state. They're federally regulated.
Can I ask a question? So, but there is a federal definition for a cessation product.
I would say the FDA, so products approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for tobacco cessation and other medical purposes are just federally regulated.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it's not some loophole for like.
Don't believe so.
Okay.
We
agree that there's
right. If
cessation
it's FDA approved,
Okay.
then it's not for tobacco cessation or medical purposes, not FDA approved, as in they recognize it as a tobacco substitute product.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we have some existing provisions around required licensure, so nobody's allowed to engage in the retail sale of tobacco products, tobacco substitutes, or tobacco paraphernalia without a tobacco license. And there are some existing provisions that are not changing, but one that is changing on in subdivision B1 here is that there is currently the tobacco license is incorporated into the liquor license forms and applications, so there's sort of a single process that includes the liquor license, and this bill is decoupling liquor from tobacco licensing. So somebody who wanted to sell both in their establishment would need separate licenses, not and you can see in the next subdivision, it's striking out the option for a liquor-tobacco license. There are two separate licenses in this bill passes. Also, under existing law, there are requirements for someone seeking a license or tobacco substitute endorsement to apply to the legislative body of the municipality where their establishment is located and pay certain fees. So this increases the fees that get paid to the legislative body of the municipality from $110 to $1,000 for a tobacco license or renewal of a tobacco license, and from $50 to $1,000 for a tobacco substitute endorsement. So some increases to those fees that get paid locally.
$50 to $1,000
Indeed.
Well, it's a major squeeze on.
annually.
I believe these are annual licenses, yes. And I think
So you're gonna try and restrict access, you're gonna make it harder to provide.
yes, I don't, and I have to look to see the last time these fees were updated, but,
And that would be helpful to find out when the last.
yes, and I don't know if the witnesses know. Okay, I think you're gonna hear more from the Attorney General's office and other witnesses about some of the rationale behind these changes. So I will tell you the what and they will tell you the why.
Correct.
Um,
Okay, so the decoupling is.
Decoupling is, yep.
Local fees.
And then there's an existing penalty for someone who sells tobacco products, tobacco substitutes, or tobacco paraphernalia without the appropriate license or license endorsement. And under the existing law, it's a misdemeanor and a fine of up to $200 for a first offense and $500 for a second offense. This takes it out of the criminal realm and says it's a civil penalty and increases that from $200 for a first offense to $2,000 and from $500 for a subsequent offense to $5,000.
So again, really ramping up
Exactly.
access. David,
I'm listening.
me too.
Right, so that's the penalty for selling without the appropriate license, for retail sale without the appropriate license. And then it again specifies that nobody can engage in the importation, distribution, wholesale sale, or retail sale, or a combination unless they're either licensed wholesaler as defined in the tax statutes, or has purchased them from a licensed wholesale dealer. That's existing law. Starting on the top of page 7, this is what Senator Ron Hinsdale was asking about. This is repealing entirely the section prohibiting and putting some penalties on minors possessing or purchasing, and use sort of goes along with the possession. I don't believe it's specifically called out. So just that section would be repealed. And by way of reminder, the age at this point is 21 years. So that's same as for others. Then there are some increases to the penalties for furnishing tobacco to individuals. I've changed from persons to individuals just to be more consistent with the language. And the penalties for that. Any question?
Like,
Yeah.
going back to page 7, what's the rationale for removing the section?
I think I'm gonna let the advocates tell you why they. Yes, I think they.
I think it goes to what Judy was saying, we'll hear more from Rose and Jill and Tina, but I think the focus of this bill is removing punishing young people and really trying to restrict access.
Right, and that's what I've heard in past years on this as well, is not to, the interest is in not punishing minors who might be addicted to nicotine as a result of,
So no consequence.
for minors in possession. If you remove, there's currently a $25 civil penalty brought in the same manner as a traffic ticket, so at the Judicial Bureau. And this would eliminate that.
What about minors who engage in sale?
So this does not change the prohibition on selling without a license or the penalties on furnishing tobacco to individuals under.
So there are consequences.
There are
for that.
consequences, right, there are consequences for selling or giving to others. There would not be consequences for personal use by minors.
Is this congruent with alcohol? The same philosophy? I don't know the law about alcohol.
It's not an area covered, but I don't believe, I believe there are still penalties for minors in possession of, alcohol. But I would defer to others who may have a clearer sense.
Okay, let's keep.
All right, so we have the penalties for furnishing tobacco to minors. This would increase the civil penalty from $100 for a first offense and $500 for a second offense to $1,000 for a first offense, and then a civil penalty and license suspension or revocation, some of which is consistent with existing law, but that's what's set out on page 9. So a subsequent violation or after a sale violation, subsequent violation or after or a sale during a compliance test conducted within 6 months after a previous violation is considered a multiple violation. There are civil penalties and minimum license suspensions or revocations. So this changes, in some cases it's clarifying the language, in some cases it's making some modifications. So under existing law, 2 violations is 2 weekday suspension. This clarifies that that is 2 consecutive weekdays and adds a $1,000 civil penalty. Under existing law, 3rd violation is suspension for 15 days. And again, this is clarifying that that's consecutive days, and it adds a $2,000 civil penalty. The 4th violation is currently suspension for 90 days, again clarifying 90 consecutive days and adding a $3,500 civil penalty. And then a 5th violation, this increases from a 1-year suspension to a revocation of the license and adds a $5,000 civil penalty.
It's really putting much more muscle around
Yes,
access and paying attention to
yes,
access.
exactly. The next section is partly some updating. So under existing law, any cigarettes or other tobacco products that are sold, offered, or possessed in violation of certain sections of the statutes are subject to being, are contraband is subject to being seized by the Department of Liquor and Lottery or Department of Taxes and destroyed. So a couple of additions here. First is to add tobacco substitutes in because they're not in the existing law. The second is adding references to items that may have been sold, offered, or possessed in violation of adding in on the online sales prohibition. That's section 1010 of this title. And then section 1013 that you'll see in a moment is a new section on deceptive products. So it's categorizing all of those as contraband as well as some existing provisions, expanding and clarifying a little bit that seizure may be by commissioner or an agent of the commissioner of liquor and lottery or taxes. And then most specifically here at the end of this subsection is that the items will be destroyed at the expense of the violator. So whoever is violating has to pay for it, and that the disposal would be in compliance with the Agency of Natural Resources laws on hazardous regulations on hazardous waste management. It also adds that if to the penalties, the fines, that those are per item, so not just a single penalty, but a per item penalty.
Is it cigarette pack, carton, box, truckload? What's an item?
I think I would defer to the enforcers on this about what the per item is, what the penalty applies to. Is it as the senator asked, a cigarette, a packet of cigarettes, a carton, a truckload? I don't know if you want to answer that.
Right now? No, when you come up, I would answer that, but let's fly it.
All right, in existing law under internet sales, there are prohibitions on internet sale of tobacco products and tobacco substitutes, tobacco paraphernalia. Under existing law, the prohibition says no one shall cause these items ordered or purchased by mail or by computer, telephone, or other electronic network to be shipped to anyone other than a licensed wholesale dealer or retail dealer in the state, and this strikes retail dealer. So it can only be sold online to or electronically to a wholesaler. And there's existing penalties. And then this does talk about at the bottom of page 11, that each shipment or transport of any of these items constitutes a separate violation.
So page 11, paragraph B, does that mean that retailers cannot order tobacco products in their online ordering?
They have to do, right, they have to purchase them through a wholesaler. Okay.
Do we know what percent, well, this is a question for the applicants. Okay.
Next is a new section on the top of page 12, prohibiting deceptive tobacco products and and tobacco substitutes. So this is a prohibition on any person marketing, promoting, labeling, branding, advertising, distributing, offering to sale, or selling a tobacco product or tobacco substitute by imitating a product that is not imitating a product that is not a tobacco product or tobacco substitute, including a food or brand of food commonly marketed to minors, and this says including candy, desserts, cereal, and beverages. You can't have a product that imitates food or beverages, or that imitates school supplies commonly used by minors, like erasers, highlighters, pens, and pencils, that imitates portable devices, including smartphones, smartwatches, video games, or consoles, and inhalers, and any product based on or depicting a character, personality, or symbol known to appeal to minors, like a celebrity, a character from comic book, movie, television show, or video game, or a mythical creature, or a product that conceals the nature of a tobacco product or substitute, or using items for describing or depicting a product described in subdivision 1. So that's a new prohibition. We have a new section on enforcement, giving the Department of Liquor and Lottery the same powers and authority to enforce the provisions of this chapter as it has to enforce the liquor laws. New section 1015 of this chapter is on the use of funds from licensing fees, penalties, and settlements, and says all penalties collected from violations of this chapter, monies the state receives from settlements based on violations or alleged violations of tobacco laws, and all revenue generated from licensing fees in this chapter that are more than the amount necessary to administer and enforce the chapter would go into the Tobacco Trust Fund, an existing special fund, and used for tobacco cessation and prevention. Then there are some kind of conforming changes in sections 2 and 3 of the bill.
Right.
One relating to the Attorney General's Complex Litigation Special Fund, and talking about settlement monies that go into that fund, and carving out those that are appropriated for, transferred or appropriated for other uses pursuant to, and adding in that transfer to the Tobacco Settlement Fund, the Tobacco Trust Fund, and similarly adding to the language on the Tobacco Trust Fund in section 3, that money would be going into it from this new direction.
And currently, the Tobacco Settlement Fund sees an annual revenue of 23 million, 20 million? We got 23 million last year, and it's in perpetuity, right? It's not forever, it's not.
Is that gradually declining as tobacco use is?
Yeah, I was gonna speak to that.
Thank you.
Right, we'll tag that, but I just wanted to give people a perspective on.
Declining.
It's a declining revenue.
All right, section 4 is on confidentiality of tax records, and this adds to the list of recipients to whom the Commissioner of Taxes may provide tax returns or return information, and this adds to the Department of Liquor and Lottery if that is for purposes of investigating potential violations of and enforcing the tobacco statutes. The next several sections are deal in large part with moving tobacco substitutes to be taxed like cigarettes. They're currently taxed like in the category of other tobacco products, which includes things like snuff and roll your own tobacco and things like that. So this is first clarifying the definition of cigarette and some of this is to be more consistent with existing provisions in Title 33 and the master settlement agreement that the state entered into with the cigarette manufacturers a number of years ago. So right now we're not fully consistent with that definition. That would make the definition consistent here.
Is this like a streamlined sales tax definition?
No, I don't believe so. I think this is the definition from the master settlement agreement between the states and the cigarette manufacturers.
Okay, so there are a number of states though that use.
Yes, and I think I actually looked
We're
at some
just
other
slow
states when
to
doing this.
adopt it.
Well, we adopted it in the context of the master settlement agreement implementation statutes. We have not put that same definition into our tax statute. So we're in the tax statutes now. And so using a consistent definition in various parts of the statute. This adds manufacturers of tobacco substitutes to the definition of manufacturer for purposes of the tax statutes. Again, a lot of this is part of moving the taxation of tobacco substitutes to be aligned with the taxation for cigarettes, including, as Senator Lyons was saying, the stamping requirement. This defines or modifies the definition of other tobacco products, partly to pick up some of the newer language in the definition of tobacco substitute based on the different ways that people are ingesting tobacco and nicotine, so including inhaling, sucking, absorbing, or consuming in any other manner, but carving out tobacco substitutes because we are treating them like cigarettes. Same thing with wholesale dealer. You'll see a lot of the changes in here are adding tobacco substitutes in with the list of cigarettes, little cigars, Roll Your Own, and some others.
Great.
Wholesale outlet and wholesale price, again, adding in tobacco substitute. And then tobacco substitute, we're just saying, look at that fairly extensive Title VII definition. That's being consistent between the two chapters. So again, adding into on the license requirement, this is adding in tobacco substitutes.
Can I ask a
Yeah, David, sorry.
Tobacco substitutes. I'm just curious why it wasn't perceived to be already covered under new smokeless tobacco and other tobacco products.
It was included in the definition of other tobacco products in this chapter, although it was not treated in the same way in the tobacco statutes, because it was being taxed like those other tobacco products. Now, because we're moving it into taxation like cigarettes, it's being pulled out. So it has been, it's new smokeless tobacco is like chewing tobacco. So it has its own definition. But this is being, so yes, it has been treated sort of as both for different purposes under the tobacco regulation and the taxation statutes. Now it's being pulled in to be taxed like cigarettes, and so it's being specifically carved out.
All of it will be taxed like cigarettes.
In the same manner, the rates are different, so you'll see when we get to the tax rates, those are specific based on nicotine content.
Okay.
The Section 6, adding tobacco substitutes to the wholesale licensure requirement. Section 7, adding tobacco substitutes to the penalties for sales without a license, and increasing, so changing from the terminology of criminal law, using fine, to civil law, civil penalty for a violation, and increasing those from $25 for a first offense and not more than $200 nor less than $25 for a subsequent offense to $2,000 for a first offense and not more than $2,000 for first offense, not more than $5,000 for each subsequent offense.
So
Yeah, Tom.
this would still apply to minors. So if a minor broke this rule, they would get this fine.
Well, this is any licensed wholesale dealer.
I think, I don't know how backed up JFO is, but I think we need a fiscal note,
Agreed.
a request now so that it's ready for
And-
vote or something.
Has Judy worked on that, the fiscal note?
I don't believe so. Generally,
They don't
JFO
do
doesn't do a fiscal note
until the committee has.
right until it's in the, being taken
Well,
up.
often there's a lot of work done in the preparation of that, so I'm just curious.
No, JFO is not involved in the preparation. Section 8, the taxes imposed on, and so this is how it's putting tobacco substitutes in with cigarettes, little cigars and Roll Your Own tobacco.
while we're in this section, is little cigars like, is that still a use?
Fine.
Cigarillos.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
so
they do,
little
yes.
cigars is like
They're
the federal.
They're
name
defined
for
in
it.
Title VII, yeah, maybe
Okay.
defined in here as well.
Okay.
So this is some of the stamping language, and there's more stamping language coming out later, but adding the tobacco substitutes in. I've done a little bit, I tried to be fairly minimal, but a little bit of cleanup language in here, trying to get rid of some legalese, getting a little bit more modern.
your favorite on our technical. section,
Exactly,
so.
exactly. So we try to be restrained, there could be a lot more work done. But I'm just scrolling through for something
Yeah.
substantive, because these are, all right, here we go to the tax rates. So the first two look different, but they are not. This is modernizing our language around the tax language for cigarettes, little cigars, and
This
rolling around
is
tobacco.
section 12.
This is in section, yes, I believe we're in section 12,
Yeah.
page 20.
23.
So under existing law, we use the term mills, which is based on a very old form of currency and calculation. So this 154 mills is $0.154. So we are just using language that inherent that after consultation with the tax department that people are more familiar with. And then calling it out separately for rolling around tobacco, just because the calculation is based on ounces as opposed to per unit. So A and B are not changing. C and D on the top of page 21 are new. So the taxes for tobacco substitute with a nicotine concentration of less than 5 milligrams per gram is 92% of the wholesale price of the tobacco substitute. I believe that is consistent with the way they are taxed now at the rate, as far as the rate is concerned, as in other tobacco products. For a tobacco substitute with a nicotine concentration of 5 milligrams per gram or higher, it will be 100% of the wholesale price of the tobacco substitute. So separating those out based on nicotine content. Then we get into some more adding in tobacco substitutes throughout the stamping language and making some minor updates to language. Again, updating language, adding in tobacco substitutes. I don't think we have anything else for a bit. Let's see if I can tell you when we get to something you'll be interested in. All right, we're getting there. So one fairly small-ish, but under seizure here, in addition to, this is kind of an analog to the seizure and contraband language in Title VII.
On page 25.
We are on, yes, bottom of 25. So again, adding in tobacco substitutes, also adding in the commissioner and lottery or their employee, agent or employee. So consistent with what's in Title VII, which is recognizing who is authorized to do the seizure. And then using the term law enforcement officer rather than peace officer, and putting in the language around the disposition is at the expense of the violator and has to be in compliance with ANR's hazardous waste management regulations. Section 15, more tobacco substitute language being added. And then somewhere we get into something more section again. All right, so section 17, this is the investigator provision, position that Senator Lyons was mentioning, and we are close to the end of the bill. This same language, except updated with dates, was included, just for some historical background, in S18 of 2023. That was billed, it was vetoed, so you have all, I think, seen that language in an earlier iteration, but it was not enacted. So this is adding a new permanent classified position of investigator at the Department of Liquor and Lottery to enforce and investigate potential violations of Vermont laws relating to direct-to-consumer sales and delivery of alcohol and tobacco products. So this is broader than just tobacco in this bill, and we're looking at having an investigator for direct-to-consumer sales and delivery. It would appropriate $160,000 to the Department of Liquor and Lottery from the Tobacco Litigation Settlement Fund in fiscal year 2027 for that position. It provides legislative intent that that position be funded from the Tobacco Litigation Settlement Fund for fiscal years 27 and 28, and that starting in fiscal year 29, the funding will be built into the base funding for the Department of Liquor and Lottery budget, with the person effectively generating the revenue for their position based on their activities in investigating and enforcing violations of the general fund, with the remainder going into the general fund.
So we don't really have to specify that some of that is online.
That's some of what,
Some of their enforcement and investigation is
No.
online.
no,
Okay.
I don't believe you.
It was really specific last year, the year before.
2 years ago.
And then if the revenue generated by their activities is not enough to cover their position in the future, then Liquor and Lottery is directed to propose eliminating that position as part of its next budget or budget adjustment presentation to the General Assembly. Basically, give them funding from Tobacco Litigation Settlement Fund for the first 2 years to get it going, the position going, then hopefully they're self-sustaining with potentially additional revenue coming in. If they're not, then you want Liquor and Lottery to come back and let you know they're not making enough to cover the position, which you're doing. And then it calls for a couple of updates. By March 15th of 2027, Liquor and Lottery would provide an update to various committees, including this committee, on the status of its implementation of the new position, with an annual report on the impact of their activities on compliance with Vermont's laws coming in after that, again, including this committee. Section 8 is a tax report, directing the Department of Tax and Liquor and Lottery to look at the existing processes for regulating and taxing cigarettes and tobacco products, and look at whether responsibility for the taxation and licensure of wholesale dealers should be transitioned from the tax department to Liquor and Lottery, with a report next January to the GovOps committees and the health committees and the finance and Ways and Means and Finance. And finally, the act would take effect on July 1st of this year, with the first report on the activities of the investigator at Liquor and Lottery due by December 15th of 2020.
Sorry, what's the report? It's not going to us, which is fine.
Oh, the report that's not going to you is whether responsibility for taxation and licensure of wholesale tobacco dealers should transition from tax to Liquor and Lottery.
I suppose we don't need to see that.
I don't think that's going to it's going to,
It seems like more of a GovOps and Ways and Means Finance issue than a economic development issue.
great,
but-
Jen, thank you very much.
Sure.
Just in the interest of time, I'm gonna move us along, because if and when we take this up, we will dive into many of those details that we just. Jill and Rose, who do you think tees up the why most? Get Jill first and then Rose?
Yeah, and if you run out of time, I'm happy to come back.
We may need to give you 15 minutes, so I apologize, but important to do all these pieces. Jill, welcome.
Good morning. I'm Jill Suttoff Guerin. I'm representing the Coalition for Tobacco Free Vermont.
And we have your, a piece from you, I believe.
Yes. So let me just try to get connected.
The rapidly emerging nicotine market.
Okay. So I'm just going to start off by framing it and saying that this is, we have been in a game of whack-a-mole with the tobacco manufacturers. And so every time you pass a policy that gets at trying to protect public health, protect the consumer, new products emerge, and then we're in a new game of what do we need to do now. And so this bill is, really an incremental step on how do we modernize our tobacco regulatory system so that we are helping the regulators, helping the retailers, helping the consumer understand what's going on and help protect our kids who are using at a huge level.
So is that data in that youth survey every year, are we seeing, when you say our youth are using at a huge level?
I've got some slides on that if you want.
Okay.
What I thought I'd do is just talk about, because we're in the economic development committee, talk a little bit about how much we spend on healthcare costs and tobacco-related disease, and that's annually. Vermont spends $404 million, and 93.7 of that is Medicaid costs. That turns out to be around $1,000 per household, in us bearing the cost of tobacco-related healthcare, and then 576 million annually in productivity losses at work. So,
Huge impact on our finances.
yes, is still the #1 killer in Vermont, so 1,000 deaths annually, and
It's the #1 cancer killer.
no, it's the 29.8 of Vermont cancer deaths are attributable. It's the #1 killer of Vermonters in this tobacco.
Oh, okay.
So when we're talking about, making a better regulatory system, we're talking about preventing a huge avalanche of healthcare costs that are coming at us with these new generations of nicotine users. So just a little bit on marketing. The tobacco industry spends about $8.5 billion annually on marketing. In Vermont, that's $15.8 million on marketing. And we spend, the state contributes $2.7 million into tobacco control. And then, like we said before, we have the master settlement dollars. That was really aimed at tobacco control, and we contribute a portion of that. And then we approximately bring in around 75 million in tobacco tax revenue. Part of what we're trying to do with this bill too is make sure that, because the wholesale level is where the tax is applied, make sure that that is being paid equally, because right now, with the online, we're questioning that. So here's some of the products. So this picture of the high nicotine disposable vapes actually came from Franklin County schools, from our friend Amy Brewer. I'm sure you know her, Senator Brock. As Ginny said, the nicotine levels are exploding, and I have a slide on that coming up too. The nicotine pouches, the use of these products in Vermont has tripled over the last 2 years. And just anecdotally, Burlington bars have said that they're using a snow shovel to remove the pouches at the end of the night. These are
From
some
where?
from their bar, from the Florida bar.
Good.
Gross, right?
That's a gross image.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So here's some of these smart vapes.
Data,
Yeah.
do we have any data on how much that rate of growth is with young people versus?
Yeah, we do.
So this is just 3 times growth in how many years?
2.
2 years.
Um,
And that's all users, not.
That's actually the young adult users.
Okay.
So
So this is
18
young
to
adults.
25 years old.
It's not in the bars.
In the bars,
Some
it's
are, but
young
not-
adults.
The 18 to 25,
Yeah.
so some.
The deceptive marketing provision of this bill is really aiming to get at some of the ones in this next picture, which look like toys. There are ones that look like your smartphone. You can text from some of them. They can connect to Bluetooth. They can be a speaker. You can listen to music through them. The video games are a puff to play. So you want to keep playing, you keep puffing, you keep using their product.
How insidious.
This next one is these new products, which we're really struggling to understand, they're nicotine free, but they're synthetic. And you saw it in the definitions, our attempt to get at these products, because there is a chemical, which I don't, Tina, do you remember the name of it? It's a long name, so I won't even attempt to say it, but 6-methyl, yeah. So anyway, it's supposed to be more potent than nicotine and highly addictive, and we don't know what it does in the body.
Right, like, because whether or not it's
Yeah.
addictive, the resin in your lungs is its own
Yeah,
huge health issue.
but it gives you that feeling because it's nicotine free. So I'm gonna go into the data on use.
Is there any scientific evidence or any data studies showing that the effect of this particular chemical?
Yes, and I have data on that, but just in interest of
The
this
7 minutes.
committee, I wasn't gonna bring it, but I can definitely share that with you. We also have, we had a great presentation yesterday from this study out of this confiscation of vapes, and there's testing around that, and so I can give you any information you want on that that we have.
Yeah, let's finish moving through this.
So this is actually very recent data. It's out of November 2025, and this is with Dr. Volanti from Rutgers, and she works with the Department of Health to create these very, they're small cohorts, but they are, they're largely tobacco users that are working with this study. And so when you see these numbers, it's 12 to 25 are the ages, and so there's some pretty high percentage numbers here that are pretty concerning. This is,
Can I ask,
yeah,
back on that slide, being that 22 to 25 is legal, why does the data set?
because young adult is defined as 18 to 25.
Okay, I
And
get
so that's what, we track that for the Department of Health. We track that in terms of the users. DLL tracks that in terms of sales. It's just a
Is there data
research.
for 12 to 21, or is not?
Yes, and I'm going to get to that.
Okay, but,
And so then I have the YRBS collected every 2 years, and that's the self-reported, so, yeah. And so this is from 2023, the most recent. So the high school average rate of e-cigarettes is 16%. And then you can see where it says the any tobacco use, and then you have it broken down in terms of,
Are those additive, or does the 16 fit into the 18?
the 16 fits into the 18.
Okay,
so it's, but they don't add.
Middle school is 7%, and I didn't have, I can give you more information on that too. In all of my slides, I will give you the citations, because there's so much data that I could share with you on this, but I can give you all my citations. This 37% of the high school students who report use of e-cigarettes daily is the real concerning part, because that shows true addiction. These are the young adult rates, the 18 to 25 years old, and you'll see where that real jump in the pouches shows up. You'll also see extremely high rates, right? Use any of the above products is all in over a third of our young adults.
Do we ask if they vape without nicotine?
Yes.
Okay, but that's not here. Did I miss that?
You're getting to
It's not in that slide.
Here it is, there's one here, it says use electronic vape containing nicotine, but that doesn't have one that says.
No, but I can give you that.
Okay. I just would hope we're not omitting that and making it seem like it's a healthier choice by not asking that question.
Yeah, I can definitely get you that. I think that's in the data set.
If I can just add.
Yeah, Dave.
So the 37% on the slide, I'm not sure what slide it is.
Yeah,
Go to the next slide, and it's got a used electronic vape products containing nicotine. It's 27% on a monthly basis, once a month, at least once in a month. 37% every day, is that? Because it just.
37% of the students who reported that they use e-cigarettes use every day. That's that data point.
Not all students, but the ones who use it 37%. Okay. I
Yeah.
understand.
So I included this, and this goes back to what Ginny was saying, in terms of the dopamine. And so when we think about dopamine, like we get dopamine every time we get a text from our bestie, right? So we're all getting that dopamine. Now you have potential with these discrete emerging products to get dopamine over and over again, right? You're getting it from the video game, you're getting it from the nicotine, and then you're getting enculturated dopamine. When kids go to school, they get more cravings and they have a harder time. It's just, we've set up this reward system for them where quitting becomes so intensely difficult, and then we have the nicotine, the high nicotine levels. This is the study that I was talking about. So this is from a public health research group that works with the Department of Health at Southern Vermont, and they went to schools across Vermont and asked them to give them their confiscated vape products. So they, over 2 years, 2023 to 2025, they confiscated 512 nicotine vapes and vaping products, which include cannabis products as well, from high schools and middle schools. And out of the 512, 510 were flavored. Just keep that in mind. We're not banning flavors in this bill, but just for you to know.
So 500, of the 512, 510 were flavored.
Mhm. So here's the first year. You can see the real winner. This Loon is 34.7% of the confiscated products. 99% of them were flavored. The THC vapes, that's 10% of the collection. That's quite a bit too. But this Loon is important in this study, and I can have her come testify, or I can ask her if I can share the full presentation, because check out what's happening in Vermont at the same time. Somehow Loon is a favorite of the retailers in Vermont.
So Loon is what?
Loon Max is an e-cigarette product
Okay.
that was confiscated, and it was the highest percentage that showed up in that first year, 2023 to 2024, and it also is the favorite in the retailers. So when we think about the retail environment influencing what youth are using, this is clear impact, right?
I mean, it's a good name, but other than that, are they like a New England company or something?
They're out of Minnesota,
Oh,
and for some reason Minnesota and Vermont have very similar patterns as far as loan
okay.
Oh, interesting.
They both have loons also.
So in the second year, and this is, goes right to the bill, 40% of the confiscated vapes are this Geek Bar, and this Geek Bar has way more nicotine in it. It also has a light up display. It also has the most amazing website, and there are games you can play. I mean, it's very fun and pretty.
Good night. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And this, maybe others can help answer this, but I mean, the most recent experience we've had with enforcement in terms of advertising to younger ages was sports betting. And like, some of this seems like very obvious attraction to kids.
And Kids Code, right?
Yeah.
Kids
and
code,
kids stuff.
yeah, so like,
When you pass Kids Code.
do we have laws on the books that allow us to enforce and say this is way too obviously oriented towards young people?
That is a good question, probably for Rose.
Yeah.
We'd like stronger language.
Yeah.
Say, how do
Okay.
you prove that?
Well, with sports betting, when we had that discussion, and maybe it was last biennium, I can't remember. You know, it's, are you advertising on college campuses? Or is the advertising so specifically, geared towards
Clearly geared.
games that young people play or what, like, we did have, there is like existing laws, there are, or, there should be something we can enforce it with the right language. We do it in every other
We
category.
need to,
Like Joe
Yeah, I'm
Campbell
almost done.
was the whole thing.
I need to have you finish that, and then we're gonna have you back, because there's.
Okay. So do you want me to continue?
Yeah, why don't you finish
Okay.
quickly, because we have Heather waiting.
Okay, so this slide, and you can take a look at this, this is crazy how much nicotine is in these Geek Bar. And there aren't prices on this slide, but I took a look and found that you can actually buy this Geek Bar Pulse for $15 online. There's 15,000 puffs in this vape. And then the Geek Bar Pulse has 25,000, and you can see the nicotine content. It's just through the roof. And as Ginny said, mostly when you smoke a cigarette, you get between 1.8 and 2 milligrams, and these kids are getting a lot. And
Does that say 900?
So it's much more intense impact. Health impact.
Absolutely, yeah,
I
crazy.
mean, yeah. Okay, great.
Would we, I didn't really understand fully in the tax definition changes. Would we then be taxing things that have much higher content at a much higher
Yes,
rate, like we do with alcohol?
yes,
Okay.
yes.
I just want to go through this really quickly because I think your next question would be, how are kids getting at these products? And so the perceived access for under 21, 61% say getting these products is easy, very easy, sort of easy. And alcohol was on her slide too as a comparative. Then you have the purchasing behavior. And so that's where it really
So they
breaks
say easy, but
down.
where are they getting?
So that's what this breaks down for you. And so
Okay.
I think what, a lot of this is, it's around the convenience store, the gas station, and then on the internet. So when we have the compliance investigator, that's part of their work. And the idea is that online compliance investigator is helping brick and mortar retailers as well. Just going through the retailer compliance data, this I just pulled last night. This is active right now, a 90% compliance rate.
Right, and we have it on our website under reports, under reports.
Yeah.
The liquor and lottery.
Jen alluded to this, the reason for separating the tobacco and alcohol licenses, we're the only state that has a 2-for-1 on that. And right now with these products, we feel like there really needs to have that separation. The sales of, right, the data point around what's selling is really around the cigarettes. And so another thing is to really think about the wholesale tax and making sure that we're equalizing that across all of the products. And then I just gave you, this is actually from 2021, but just giving you some evidence that the online retail compliance investigator is very helpful in going after these companies, bringing back money for the state. And then just going back to the pup laws, that's a huge priority for us, is to
Just ask a
reduce.
question about the online. Is it correct that the online is absolutely prohibited on a direct consumer to
Yes,
sale?
yes, in 2019 you did that.
I'm sorry?
We did it before the pandemic.
Correct. And so for anyone, not just people underage, there should be no direct
Yeah.
sales whatsoever.
Yes,
Is it happening?
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it is not hard.
And DLL and my office, we work together to sort of combat that, but it's,
So we're gonna have that.
Okay.
Obviously, this is one of our big consumer protection issues that we're gonna be addressing, but we're already now almost 10 minutes into Rose's. But thank you very much for teeing this up for us.
Yeah.
Rose and Jill will have you, and Tina will have you back in, soon. And thank you so much for sort of,
Yeah, and any more
Introducing us to
questions,
this
just
issue.
let us know.
Yeah.
We have a lot.
so terrific. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sorry, I asked so many questions.
No, I
It's
have them written down and I will definitely come back to them.
we will have you back. Heather, come join us. We're
Thank
sorry,
you.
we're a little, very stimulating subject that
That's all right, I didn't want to
consumer
interrupt.
protection issue, but the morning is full of important stuff.
Yeah.
And you are next
Free to reach out
important stuff.
if you have
Thank you,
questions.
guys.
Thank you.
This was terrific tee up.
Thank you. I did bring some printouts for folks. I'm sorry they're not double-sided, so they look really thick and scary, but, if you would like these to go along with the
I think we
presentation.
have,
Oh, okay. All right, great, even better.
save them for your next committee.
So I'm happy to join, so I can share the slides, if you just give me 1 second.
If you want, those are for the online crowd.
Up to the committee.
Let's start our timeline, we just
Okay.
dive right in. And, it's posted on our committee webpage, so people online can follow it on our webpage.
Perfect.
Hi, Heather, welcome, it's good.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. For the record, Heather Pelham, I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Tourism and Marketing, and really appreciate the time this morning to give you an update on all the amazing things that we've been doing.
And you had some summer, we've been thinking a lot about.
We have. I'm gonna first take us back to 2024, so as folks probably understand, when we talk about economic impact, it takes some time to get all the data, but this first slide for you just sets the stage. Tourism in Vermont, big business, 16 million visitors, $4.2 billion with a B, 9% of our GDP. For comparison, the national average is 3%, so, we're 3 times more dependent on our visitor economy here in Vermont than others. Over 30,000 jobs in the sector, more than 10% of our workforce, and guess what? Visitors pay taxes. In fact, they paid almost $300 million in taxes in 2024. So we can talk about that a little bit more, but just wanted to set the stage. So when we think about visitation, again, 16 million has been fairly steady for the last couple of years, really since the rebound after the pandemic. We did see a slight uptick for 2024. Perhaps solar eclipse was a little bit of a help from that. We'll certainly take that, and our visitation is split pretty much evenly between day and overnight visitors.
Can I?
Yeah.
Really quickly, I know we're just oh, we can't produce an eclipse, but I hope somewhere you're thinking about what's similarly attractive and how do we build the infrastructure
To support.
to support it?
So, I think she is thinking about that all the time.
If I could move, the heavens, I would, but.
So this, essentially what looks like a plateau from 2022 to 2024, do you have a notion of whether we've saturated our hotel, our tourist support economy?
I would say emphatically no. We have a lot of capacity in our accommodation sector. Our occupancy rate is usually around 65-70%, so we can certainly.
Is that good or bad?
It's
To me, it sounds bad.
okay.
It's not 100%.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's not near 100% either.
So there is capacity. Obviously, it's seasonal, so, and it's regional, so we can get in a little bit more. But in terms of, does our infrastructure as it currently stands, can we handle quote unquote more visitation? Absolutely. Third place is visitor spending is spread across, there's the major categories, obviously lodging, retail, recreation, and so forth. But as you see, visitor spending affects all sectors of the economy. It's spread pretty much directly, especially when you think about indirect supply chain purchases as well as induced from employees with their wages. I mentioned employment briefly. So we are at over 31,000 right now. That is still about 5.5% decline from pre-pandemic. So we're not up to full employment from pre-pandemic, but it is slowly climbing. And again, that employment is spread across the state, not only, but across different sectors. So if I bring you now to this chart, on page 7, this kind of gives you an idea of how that visitor spending and that employment is spread across the state. So we see that we have activity in every county. Certainly there are some counties that have additional infrastructure. So you see the large share of state spending in Chittenden County. That's where the airport is. There's a lot of infrastructure. You would expect that. But you can also see Lamoille, Rutland, Windsor, Winsome. There's a lot of concentration there, based again on the infrastructure we have with the winter recreation, as well as throughout the year. The 3 counties noted in blue, Essex, Franklin, Grand Isle, just interesting that we see double-digit increases there, and I would say that is an Eclipse effect, given where those counties are, and given that they are, relatively small counties to begin with, so you would see, if there was a slight bump, you would see an increase. So that's really encouraging. We will certainly keep watching that, and being able to spread out visitors and, the economic benefits they bring is certainly a huge priority for us.
Are you going to expect a reduction in 2025 because of the effect of,
I'll get into Canada in just a minute.
I get the Eclipse, but I'm curious, Lamoille Valley Rail Trail, didn't that come online in 2024 too? And doesn't that cut across those 3 counties?
That's a piece of
It does. I think it's a piece of it. I think that's, there's so much potential there that we have not achieved yet that I don't think I'd see a bump from that specifically, but great to keep working on. So that brings us to slide 8, which is tax impacts. I don't think I can stress this enough that I would encourage all of us, when we are in this climate of where are we going to find revenue, how are we going to keep Vermont affordable for our residents. Visitors are temporary taxpayers. I think you've heard me say that before. I say that with all due respect to them, but they literally are bringing revenue into our state. The amount of direct taxes paid by visitors is the equivalent of over $1,000 per Vermont household. We're on the revenue side of the equation, trying to grow the pie for everybody. So put a pin in that. We can come back to that later if you like. But I know we're short on time, so I'm going to kind of power through
This is just to begin.
Yes.
But we have to get some sense of what your need is. Our economic development bill, we have to at least have it drafted out by the end of January. So that's one of the reasons, because what you're a key piece of our economy, we need to make sure we know how we can best support you.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. So we'll go through
Which
quite a bit
will
more.
not be included in the budget we're going to hear next week.
Exactly. We'll talk about that next week, right? So then that brings us to, it wouldn't be, well, no, it's 2026. I was gonna say it would be 2025 if we weren't talking about the Canadian situation. So the graphs on page 9 are unfortunately familiar to us all now, into what we have experienced, unfortunately, and how that's been taken by our Canadian neighbors. So, started off the year strong. March, we really hit those, 30+% declines. I think we hit bottom in about July. We've seen a slight, the delta has decreased up into October. But if you look at the credit card spending, which is in the top right, we are down year over year almost half, 48%. And the bulk of the spending from our Canadian visitors is in the summer. So that really hits very, very hard, especially in the northern parts of the state.
So especially northern tier.
Exactly.
The top northern counties,
Yes.
big impact.
Absolutely, big impacts. In terms of travel intent going forward, for 2025, there's about 15% of Canadians who indicate that they would be willing to travel to the United States. That's down almost 10 points from last year, which was 24%.
So, can you quantify the 48% is roughly, what are we looking at? Like an average, it's like $1.5 million impact, 2 million impact?
Yeah, I would say so. Canadian visitation is about 5% of our overall visitors.
Yeah.
We usually think it's about 150 million total. So I'd hesitate to put an exact number on how much we've lost.
We just get a sense of it.
Yeah, it's many, many millions of dollars. I know that's not as exact if you want, but I can do a little bit
But
more.
it may
math
not be
for it.
75 million. I mean,
Right, exactly. There are still Canadians who are coming. And when we look at the next slide about Canadian sentiment, you know, there's no doubt that this is a huge effect, right? So 70% of Canadians say that the federal situation impacts their desire to come here. But I've also included a slide that shows that Canadians also do understand that Vermont is different. So 46% of Canadians will put Vermont in a different category. They understand what we have to offer. So I would say that there is hope. And we have not let up on our advertising when it comes to the Canadian markets. On the next slide, I'm just showing you that, you know, over the past summer, we continued all of our advertising into the Canadian markets. Basically, we focus on Quebec, Montreal, DMA. We also do Ontario as well, Eastern Townships, still for Quebec, of course. But, you know, we were really kind of doing our best to present ourselves as that welcoming destination, but also understanding that people were real, their emotions were very raw. And I will just point to, we did do a joint promotion with the Vermont Mountain Bike Association in August for a free ride day for Canadians. Yes, we saw participation. We also saw a lot of negative comments online that people just weren't ready to play nice, to be honest. So it doesn't mean that we're going to stop doing what we're doing. But we did then think about, okay, is now, if as we got into fall, we felt like things were starting to stabilize a little bit. So we did start running what we're calling our 100% Love for Canada campaign. So on page 12, you can see we started a digital campaign with a little bit of a soft launch in the fall to really make sure that we were juxtaposing our, you know, some of our great assets, you know, why come to Vermont, the trails, the back roads, the food and so forth, you know, with just a very, hopefully, safe statement that we have 100% love for Canada. And we coupled that with, we worked with the industry to create special incentives for Canadians, which is a great way for us, you know, we always think, you know, we're top of the funnel, right? We're trying to get people to think about coming to the state, but we want to make sure that we're bringing that business to, or, you know, our local downtowns and so forth. So putting together a deals program, there are, some of the research does show that, you know, a little bit of discount certainly does help. Obviously, the exchange rate is another factor in why Canadians are coming. So that was a way that we were able to put that together to support our local businesses, as well as hopefully provide some enticement for Canadians. So as we get more data, you know, to your point, Senator Wakefield, we'll try to quantify exactly what the loss is and where we are. But right now, we really are on the back foot.
And given most of a lot of the messaging we're seeing here is in French, I'm assuming that a significant percent of our Canadian visitors are that local, are Quebec quads, are from Quebec.
Yeah, we find that certainly when Canadians come here, they know they're coming to an English-speaking country, so there is a bit of an expectation that many folks, as we understand, are bilingual. But we find it's very important for us to be able to promote our ads in French as well, even if it's just a matter of respect. So we understand that you're bilingual, you know. So
the percent, I mean, at some point it'd be interesting.
I mean, what we see from engagement, we definitely see more engagement with our advertising from English speakers. But I wouldn't put that to say that we don't think it's important to do both.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know if you were being vague on purpose, but I didn't quite understand the comment about people not ready to play nice. What does that mean? Who wasn't playing nice?
I think that the sentiment in Canada, there are still very raw emotions of people who feel like they might love Vermont, they might even like the rest of the United States as well, but they're not ready to come show that with their pocket.
Okay, so they didn't have a bad experience with a Vermonter.
Correct.
Okay.
More that we can't escape
We are
the larger
America.
context, exactly, that we are in.
We're, you know, the Washington fallout hits us.
Yes, exactly. And so, you know, there's that one stat which I put in there, which shows that, you know, almost 50% of Canadians understand that Vermont is a little bit different, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to cross the border
Sure.
to show us. Sure, they believe that.
funds.
While I have you, one thing that I would love to see, and I'm a broken record, but I find if I raise these notions that are good ideas with people like yourself, they might gain traction. Amtrak, now the Ethan Allen Express and the Vermonter. I had the luxury of traveling in Europe a couple of years ago, and I was with my family with 3 kids. They always had a family bundle, so and it would always be so much cheaper when you're traveling with kids. I just got a quote to get from New York City up to Vermont, $810 for a family of 5. It just doesn't make economic sense because it's just cheaper to rent a car or just not do it. I'm just saying if we could work with our influences with Amtrak to try to at least allow family bundles, I think more people in the bigger cities, now that we have the Ethan Allen, the Vermonter, will go up for the weekend because it's easier to travel with small kids on the train. And so I just would encourage that. That's an economic development opportunity to try to expand family-friendly pricing models that they do in Europe for our
Just
train service.
family friendliness.
Yes,
My God,
I wish I could.
the second you leave the US, like, they're like, here's a different line, he wants to help you with your stroller, here's some toys for your children.
So that is something we also have to, I mean, discuss with Amtrak, but happy to do that.
Yes, and I do know that they do run discounts, at certain times of the year, clearly not right this second. But great point, train travel is a wonderful way to bring visitors.
Is our messaging family focused as well? Like, I like flying out of Montreal now because it's more family friendly. I don't think they feel the same way about Burlington or the United States. I'm taking my kids to Ottawa in mid-February. I know people are going to be nice and I will have walkways that work for strollers. Like, this is such a problem.
In terms of, how visitors choose to travel, I think those kind of considerations are, extremely important. And I think that's why we're lucky that, people have options so they can choose what works for them. In terms of Amtrak messaging, I don't know how much they focus on family versus not. But certainly in terms of our messaging, we try to encourage folks to think about all the different modes of transportation there are. We do have, a good amount of content about Amtrak on our website.
Do you have a family-friendly Canada ad?
We include family in all of our advertising as one of our core messages, yes.
Okay.
I need you to keep moving, yes, we're gonna already go over time, but I want to
Yes.
make sure you get through this.
So, thank you. So, when it comes to how do we promote visitation, slide 13 just shows that we are in a variety of different tactics that we utilize to bring visitors here. We think about, not only our particular target markets, as well as the different ways we talk to folks. Question?
If I could, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank
So, a lot of our conversation in this committee is about the return on investment. We've had this conversation in the education committee years past. So we see your budget, but do you have any metrics on return?
Let me get through a couple more slides and I'll talk about this directly. So we are involved
Just
in,
as a note, there is a budget on page 13.
yeah, so that was our summer campaign. Just some examples
That was just
of
a summer campaign.
summer campaign, examples of creative. As we get into slide 16, here's where we start talking about what is the impact of our marketing? What does that look like? So on this slide, we were able to do a brand lift study based on a particular tactic we used this summer in the New York City market. We had digital kiosks throughout Brooklyn with video as well as static ads. We also had advertising on the Long Island Railroad and Metro North Railroad. They did a brand lift study for us, and they were able to report that 50% of visitors were called seeing the ads, which was over benchmark, which is around 43% for travel tourism in general. Particularly of note that, younger adults under 35 had a higher recall. What is the impact of that? We found that just folks who were exposed to the ads, we found they had almost a 10% brand lift in how you would rate Vermont as a destination. If folks actually recall seeing the ads, we got a 30% lift. Again, over benchmark, which was normally 18. So then moving from just, how do you feel about the destination? Would you consider Vermont? So this is the next slide, because it's really about, will they actually come? So again, just being exposed to the ad, we've got, a small 2.6% lift. If folks remember seeing the ads, we got almost a 21% lift in their intent to travel. with all of our advertising, we're always looking at how we can quantify the effects. And so to the point made earlier about how could we replicate the solar eclipse, well, maybe we can't do that specifically. But we have a specific study from Vermont that shows with just a 2.2% brand lift, that translates into 400,000 visitors. We saw 175,000 visitors come to the eclipse. That's double the amount. So if we are able to continue our advertising in these very core markets and are able to achieve that kind of brand lift, that is bringing visitors here, much like we saw with.
So how does a consideration lift translate to actual traffic?
So I'm gonna come to that as well.
Okay.
So there's all sorts of different levels that we can do this, right? So we know that, a purchase decision doesn't just happen overnight, right? So part of it is how do we stay top of mind, then is how do we actually achieve that intent? I don't have to focus on this. The next slide is just showing that, with all of our activities, whether we're bringing reporters here, bringing influencers here, we're filming this season for next season's advertising, we're always trying to make sure that we are all over the state. So that's just a quick math that's just showing that we have been doing filming and bringing attention to communities all over the state.
Which is great.
Do you track data on how many people struggle to get here or return because of a lack of available flights, hotels, infrastructure, roads,
It's always tricky to know why people didn't come. It's not easy to ask them why they did come. We have been doing a year-long visitor intercept survey. I don't have those results in here, but certainly something that I can follow up on. At the end of that, now granted, those are people who did come, but we do have a section that says, basically, what's your satisfaction? Mostly it's very, very high. For the few that, have some dissatisfaction, we see maybe single digits of perhaps it was more expensive.
In that survey, are you quantifying what they're reacting to, like whether it be air travel or, hotel quality, whatever.
snow traffic?
We have what they share with us. Yeah.
But are you asking that?
Yeah, we're asking them, were they satisfied with the experience that they
Not
had?
were they satisfied, but were they satisfied with these aspects, but dissatisfied with these aspects?
Yeah, so if unsatisfied, what happens?
If unsatisfied, we provided the opportunity for them to tell us why they were unsatisfied. So it wasn't category like, was it this, this, or this?
You got that feedback?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because that helps us in other committees.
My anecdotes, but I made my husband I was like, am I biased or is every other family we're seeing leaf peeping Indian? So you need to reach out to me because there were so many Indian tourists this fall that I saw, and they have very specific ways that they're going to experience things, and they really like to travel.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
We will have a more complete report on which includes profiles for.
We should talk to all the Indian hotel owners and whatnot.
Great packages.
Yes, so then I have a couple of slides on our winter campaign last year. Again, the different types of tactics that we employ, some examples of our creative. I want to bring you to slide 22, which is where, again, how do we
Put
prove
up the title of the slide because they're not numbered.
Okay,
They are over by the date.
Oh, okay, thank you, yeah.
so slide 22, slide 22. We're talking about, again, advertising effectiveness. How do we measure what it is that we've been able to accomplish with our advertising? So with this particular study, this is survey-based, did you see the ads, did you not, what did you think? We were able to generate a 44% awareness with the target markets that we were looking at, which was about 4 million winter travelers that we were focused on. If you look at the next slide, here's where we can see that, one, not only were our ads, universally received positively 90%, which is over the average of 60, the goal is 75%, that consumers do recall seeing them in multiple avenues, which is important because we know that it's all about different touch points, for impressions that bring someone to actually change their behavior. You can also see that folks who were exposed to advertising stayed longer, they did more things on their trip, and they spent more money. As taking that even one step further, so what is that actual ROI? So if you want to study any slide in this presentation, I would be slide 24, which is what does that all add up to? So just walk you through the math here. So we know that some people will come anyway. What we're trying to establish is like, what is that travel increment between those who would not necessarily travel, but did travel based on our advertising? We have calculated that to be a 3.6% may not seem like a lot, but when you do the math, so we're talking about, we received a 44% awareness. You can see this on the slides, with a 3% travel increment, that's 145,000 trips. This is just from last winter's campaign of people who came here specifically because of the advertising. You look
145,000.
145,000 specifically because of the advertising. You look at how much did they spend? They spend an average of over $2,000 per trip. That comes out to 300
per person.
per trip or family unit. That translates into over $300 million economic impact. So considering that we spent $538,000 on our winter campaign, that's a 574 to 1 return on investment.
Wow.
If you think about that specifically, those same 145,000 people, so we're not talking about the 12 million here, we're talking about the 145,000 that I can prove to you came here because of advertising, spent $23 million in taxes. Again, that's a $538,000
43 to
campaign,
1.
43 to 1 tax return on investment.
That's pretty damn good.
I would like to think so, yes.
Yeah.
So what we were doing works. We would love to continue doing more of it, and we certainly shall. I will point you to the next slide, which is just a little bit of a wake-up call, which is that we are not alone in this game for temporary taxpayers to support our economy. Tourism is a very competitive landscape. We did do a brand study this year that looked really closely as to where does Vermont fit versus our closest competitors. I can let you look at this more closely, but basically, the study comes out in black and white, says, our problem is not that Vermont doesn't like us, it's that we are completely overlooked. We are not on people's radar. There are the states like Maine and Massachusetts are always higher above us in terms of intent to travel. People just aren't familiar with what we do because we do not have the loudest voice, because we do not have the kind of budget behind us that other states do. So if you ask people in the national survey, they were asked, no prodding or whatever, where would you consider going in the Northeast? Less than 15% named Vermont. So we're behind Maine, New York, Boston. We have work to do. This data, this study is, again, this is folks who look at destinations all over the country. They're clean saying that, that our appeal as a destination is not enough to keep us competitive. So
Maine just has great slogans.
they also have a $17 million budget that they've had.
There you go. Okay, so yeah, tell us what's different about Maine. They have a $17 million budget. Ours is $8 million.
Ours is $4 million for destination marketing.
Okay.
Actually, I think Maine's honestly is more than that, but I focus on the fact also that they have had that for 20 years.
Right, and are they doing better than us in this difficult market?
Yes,
Like percentage-wise?
more people know about Maine, more people think about going to Maine than they do to Vermont, yes.
Okay, we are now into our break time, so I just want to keep
Okay.
you going.
So there's a lot in here, so again, that's one reason why I want to make sure that these slides have a lot of information. Look at them again, be happy to come back. The next slide kind of talks about, very briefly, just bullets of all the different projects that we've been involved in since we have been the lucky recipients of that federal funding. That has now been spent down, but we were able to look at research. We were able to look at, again, these advertising effectiveness studies. We were able to invest in some workforce programs, which I can talk about briefly. They're in here. We also were able to create a destination management plan. That's on page 28. We've been working the whole past year on that. Basically, it's a blueprint for the industry going forward for the next 5 to 10 years. How can we really sustain the visitor economy? We were able to identify 4 strategic imperatives. Those are basically focusing on destination marketing. What does it look like to have a resilient tourism sector? How do we think about our tourism infrastructure? And then how do we think about the visitor experience? I don't have time to go through those 4 imperatives, but each of these imperatives has a set of objectives. And within those objectives, we have specific actionable initiatives that we will be undertaking with the industry. This is a plan not just for ourselves, but for the industry as a whole. We'll be going around the state over the next couple of months to bring to different communities. We've already done one session down in the Bennington, Manchester area to really talk to our stakeholders, what does this mean to you? What are you seeing here that aligns with your strategic priorities? Some of these objectives are around, I mentioned, spreading folks out around the state. We're also looking at, how do we think about seasonality? How do we think about, meetings and conventions? How do we think about diversifying our visitor base? How do we think about, whether infrastructure for outdoor recreation, or if it's thinking about, making sure we have the right visitor experience for folks with disabilities. There's a lot in here, which I wouldn't do it justice.
We will have you back after the budget address.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. So,
And in between, we just focused on the 3 minutes we have left on your asks. Or are you not able to make your asks until after the budget address?
I think it would be more productive if we had it after the budget
Okay.
address.
So-
So I will, in the time I have left, again, there are slides here. We were able to do 2 specific workforce initiatives with the EDU funding we received. One, we were able to fund FOBA to do,
And which one they want to continue is, I think, because as that money evaporates.
that money is gone, so I would say with, the Vermont Outdoor Business Alliance, I know that this committee is able to hear from Kelly Alta on a regular basis. I think she can tell you more about what they have in the future. This was great that we were able to help them develop curriculum that they can do going forward, so the upfront investment has been made, and there are outcomes of that program on page 33. We were also able to help launch a hospitality management certificate at UVM. They've run 2 cohorts of that program already. They have a new cohort starting in February. So again, we were able to provide that impetus to get the program off the ground. Now it should be up and running.
And that's a certificate, course available to undergraduates or to
It's
all of
to
them?
anybody, so incumbent workers who might be looking to advance, folks looking to get into the sector would certainly be welcome. And I know that UVM is looking to actually extend that to current students. Right now it is continuing education, but they are looking to extend that to current students and are working on a new certificate for outdoor recreation and snow sports, which they hope to launch in the fall.
Right.
So, online or?
They are online. One of the things that's a unique feature about this training is that they all have a capstone internship, which is a paid internship that they do at a Vermont location. So either an inn, resort, and so forth. Housing is provided if needed. So they're able to get that on the ground information.
Love Kevin.
Yeah.
Love you too, but I need tea.
So, we're gonna break here. We're gonna have you back after the budget address. And at that point, because we're gonna need to just at least have a draft, on what we want to include in the economic development bill.
Okay.
So, part of why we're beginning to get this from the committee now, we, as you know, have such a limited time. So maybe you and I can continue this a little bit offline. You can with other members of the committee as well.
Sure.
This is really an impressive, and really gratifying report.
Thank you. And I had to limit myself to 45 slides because there's so much I could tell you.
There is so much, and we are all so grateful. And it always reminds us to reappreciate what we all kind of sort of take for granted. But it doesn't happen without the investment. And I would remind us that you look at those differences and there we are.
It is real. I'd love to come back after budget address. The end of this packet, I will just flag for folks if you want to look at, is about our relocation program. So this is
a key piece, and it will follow Kevin Chu's report. Because Kevin Chu, as we all know, says we need more Vermonters.
Right.
So Randy, this and I are big into supporting, bringing people to Vermont, and have been for a long time. This committee has supported that, and we really need a strategy for how we do that incorporates the rest of the legislature, because we've had a hard time bringing them along in terms of understanding that we are investing hundreds of millions of dollars in Vermonters. It's not that we're ignoring Vermonters. We need more Vermonters.
Not at all. So there's information in the packet about Think Vermont, which, as everyone knows, is about relocation, but it's also about retention. To your point about once folks are new Vermonters, how do we make sure that they stay? So
with that.